Illumination is an animation studio made by Universal that is notorious for putting out movies that have ranged from good to awful, mostly on the awful side. However, what if I told you that Illumination probably had the potential to be a good animation studio with all their scrapped films, ranging from a few different cuts to many film adaptations, with only 2 original films? Well, in today's video, I will be listing every Illumination film that was scrapped, but before we get ready, I should say the major reason why these films got scrapped. Illumination was originally going to be Universal's main family entertainment label, similar to Universal 1440 Entertainment, but when Hop flopped and received a very bad reputation, the plan was scrapped and they just became a full-on animation studio without any plans to make another live-action CGI hybrid film. Now that's out of the way, get ready to see what could have been for this studio, starting with alternate cuts of their released films. The Lorax is a 2012 CGI animated movie by Illumination that is based on the Dr. Seuss book of the same name. It was panned by critics and had a marketing controversy for going against the original book's message. Now, what if I told you that there was an original draft for this movie that was going to be dark and fit the meaning of the book better? Well, unfortunately, we can't see the original draft, but we do have hints about it from these 2 demos. Biggering and Finidvale. Biggering is obviously the most famous out of all the demos because there was a more serious version of How Bad Can I Be in that it was very different from it. It didn't just say that a few trees are dying, but how some things are dying. In fact, after this video is over, just go listen to the track. Then there's the original demo for Finidvale. It still sounds like the one that made to the film, but now it feels like the mood is off and that does fit the book is adapting. Anyways, the notable differences between this version and the final product are that Got All That We Needville is now Get More Than We Needville. The parking lot is now the monument of the ones that is soon to be replaced by a pizza chain. O'Hare has his own verse where he says, "I sell them something they should get for free." And Ted Wiggins also has his own verse where he sings about wanting stuff he can't have. From these demos and these comments made by Biggering's composer, it's safe to say that the Lorax was going to be way more different, with the plot being that Ted Wiggins wants a tree for himself instead of for his crush, and how the one so is not just bringing down trees, but the environment as a whole. Now don't blame Illumination for scrapping this cut just yet, because I have a theory about it at the end of the video that blames their parent company for it. Anyways, for their other films, there's a rumored Despicable Me draft that didn't have minions. Then there's the complete Al Pacino cut for Despicable Me 2 where Al Pacino played El Macho before he was replaced by Benjamin Bratt. And finally, there's an early version of the Marty movie from what I can tell from a leaked animatic involving the characters racing. I can't show it because of a certain company, but it's probably enough to tell us that it was gonna be different compared to the final one we got. Yeah, I almost thought there would be more details about these cuts, but that's all I found online. Anyways, it's time to move on to the adaptations. Before Despicable Me, Flanimals was most likely going to be their first film, as it was announced on April 28, 2009. Or maybe it would have been their second film after Despicable Me. Based on the books by Ricky Gervais, the plot would have been about a purple creature from 50 ugly species going on a mission to change the world. Matt Selman would write the script and Gervais would be an executive producer who would voice the lead character. And that was it. It's obviously scrapped now. The only thing remaining from this film is a short film called Brad and Gary, which hasn't been released to the public. Come on, Illumination, you have this in Penglai. Release them to the public. Where's Wally, or Where's Waldo, I don't know why they changed the name to that in North America. It's an interesting case because in 2002 Nickelodeon was working on a film adaptation for it until it got scrapped. Illumination did as well in 2009 until it also got scrapped. And finally Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer started one in 2011 which is currently in development hell. For Illumination's case, it was going to be a live action with Classic Media's Eric Elgenbogen as the executive producer. In 2013, it was announced to be cancelled alongside other films I'll talk about sooner. Surprisingly enough, DreamWorks Animation, which owns Classic Media, would be bought by Universal in 2016, and 3 years later we would get a Where's Wally animated series by DreamWorks. 4 months before Despicable Me was released in theaters, it was announced that Illumination acquired the rights to the Addams Family comics and would work on a stop-motion animated film adaptation of it, with Tim Burton being the director. There isn't too much information about it that I could find online, but from what I heard, development stopped in 2013 because Universal lost the rights to the property and now MGM was working on the film, which would be CGI animated instead of stop-motion animated. It was released in 2019, receiving bad reviews, and got a sequel 2 years later, also receiving bad reviews. Ironically enough, Universal would distribute both films internationally, while Tim Burton would work on the Netflix series Wednesday. A few weeks after the release of Despicable Me, Illumination announced a live-action CGI feature film of Curious George based on the books of the same name. For all we know, Frank Welker would have provided George's vocal effects and Andrew Adamson was probably going to be the director and writer of the film. I assume it got scrapped after Hop failed since Illumination no longer wanted to make live-action CGI hybrid films after that. Also, this wasn't Universal's first time trying to make a live-action CGI Curious George movie. 3 months after Despicable Me, Illumination and Tezuka Productions jointly announced that there would be a live-action CGI film of Pluto. It also got scrapped for the same possible reason the Curious George movie was scrapped. On May 26, 2011, an Ugly Dolls movie was announced by Illumination with David Horvath and Sun Min Kim, the creators of Ugly Dolls, being set to executive produce, while Larry Stuckey would write the script. After that, we never heard anything about it, but the movie's rights were moved to Stick Entertainment in 2015 and the film would release in 2019. On August 16, 2011, it was announced that Universal and Illumination acquired the rights package to make a film based on the 60-minute segment Gospel for Teens. Meledandri said it would be the company's first live-action family film deal, and he would produce with escape artist Todd Black, while the script would be written by Stephen Belbird, and that's all we heard from it. This is probably the strangest one in the list of scrapped adaptations from Illumination. Since 2000, the author of Emily the Strange, Rob Rieger, has been trying to get a feature film adaptation of the character, with the rights going from Fox Animation, Universal Studios, and finally to Dark Horse Entertainment and Amazon Studios where it is today. For Universal Studios, it was announced in September 2010 that they acquired the rights to the comic and Chloe Grace Moretz would be cast as Emily. In August 2011, it was announced that Melissa Wallach, who wrote Mirror Mirror, was hired to write the film. 2 months later, it was confirmed that Illumination was working on the film. And in September 2013, it was announced that Keelan O'Rourke would rewrite the film's script. Unfortunately, the project was dropped by Universal in December 2016, with the current rights moving to Dark Horse Entertainment and Amazon Studios. In November 2011, a Woody Woodpecker animated feature film was being planned with John Altschuler and Dave Krinsky being in talks to develop a story. In July 2013, it was cancelled, and 3 months later, Bill Kopp announced that Universal and Illumination hired him to direct an animated feature film with 3 interwove stories. The project was put on hold and cancelled, as Chris Meledandri said the concept was too thin for a 85-minute movie, and they were fine with the Minions movie. Oh right, my theory I'm gonna explain at the end of the video. 6 years later, however, we would get a Woody Woodpecker live-action CGI feature film, which was only released theatrically in Latin America and didn't do well in terms of reputation and box office money. In March 2012, following the success of The Lorax, a Canada had CGI animated film was announced by Universal and Illumination that would have Rob Lieber as the writer and Andre Genson as the executive producer, and that was all until January 2018 when Warner Animation Group, now called Warner Bros. Pictures Animation, would pick up the rights to the film as part of a creative partnership with Suits Enterprises. 3 months after The Lorax was released, Illumination announced a Clifford the Big Red Dog live-action CGI feature film based on the books of the same name. Matt Lopez was set to write the screenplay, while Meledandri and Debrina Forte from Scholastic would produce the film. 1 year later, the project was announced to be cancelled, but now it was in development at Universal Pictures with David Bowers in talks to direct the film. 3 years later, the movie's rights were bought by Paramount in 2016, and 5 years later it would release after many delays from the 2020 pandemic. On May 19, 2015, Chris Meledandri went to visit South Korea to promote the Minions movie and signed with the animation studio Mofag Alfred. This was because his company planned to make a feature film of the 2014 short film Johnny Express. 2 months later, Illumination was optioning the rights to Johnny Express, and that was it. We had no idea what happened to it, but I'm pretty sure it's cancelled now. Those were all the scrapped film adaptations Illumination planned to make. So now to talk about the original films they scrapped, which is very minimum compared to the number of adaptations they cancelled. In December 2009, Illumination announced that they would be making an animated film based on a pitch by famous actor Jack Black and Jason McAuliffe on cryptozoology, which is the study of legendary creatures like Bigfoot whose existence are unconfirmed. Black would have been producing the film alongside Ben Cooley and Chris Meledandri through his production company Electric Dynamite, and he would not provide a voice for the film. That's all we heard from it, so it's safe to say that it's cancelled. On October 6, 2011, it was announced that Johnny Depp would produce and possibly star as Dr. Seuss in a biopic of the author by Illumination and Infinitum Nihil, which would be a mix of live action and animated characters. Keith Booney was hired to write the screenplay while Christine Dombrowski, who's Depp's sister and president of Infinitum Nihil, Illumination's Meledandri, and Dave Kennedy were producers. It also suffered the same fate that the untitled cryptozoology film did. And that's all of Illumination's scrapped films, which were mostly adaptations. Now, before I end the video, I said while talking about the Lorax's original draft, I have a theory about why it's Illumination's parent company's fault for how the Lorax turned out. So let me explain now. Have you ever asked yourself why DreamWorks takes risks while Illumination plays it safe, despite both companies being owned by Universal? Well, if you saw the comment by Big Brain's composer, it appears to be Universal's fault instead of Illumination's. I mean, like, if Illumination was playing it safe this whole time, then they wouldn't allow Big Brain to be made in the first place. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Universal has more control over Illumination than DreamWorks, and when they saw the original draft for the Lorax that contains Biggering, they told Illumination to rewrite the film into what it is today. From this day forward, Illumination has continued to make films that play it safe most of the time, all because Universal has more control over them than DreamWorks. Heck, maybe Universal was the one that forced Illumination to make a Minions movie for profit. However, that doesn't mean all hope is lost for the studio, because around Lightyear's release, they did say that they would take risks, and later in September 2022 they announced an upcoming adult animation label called Moonlight. Let's just hope that Universal has less control over Illumination this time. Anyways, goodbye.